your families. In this show, we focus on 6 areas of health for families: emotional, financial, mental, physical, social, and spiritual. And this month, we're focusing on our social well-being. I'm Emmalou Penrod, your family relationship coach, and I have as my guest today another show host, Terri Crosby, and she is a relationship coach, an author, and a speaker. And Terri, I understand you just read about a study with some rather fascinating information on how to predict the success of a relationship.
I did. It's such a great study. I think this is always the question in, for relationship coaches and therapists, and is how do you make this relationship work over time? Is it all in the choosing? Is it after the choosing? What goes on? So this relationship data has more to do with choosing, and how do we choose a better romantic partner? It was done by a woman named Samantha Joel in 2019. And because she was, not backed by a giant university and she didn't have millions of dollars to do this study, she did this absolutely brilliant thing. She got 80 some, I forget what that, 85 other scientists to join her study and add their data into this whole question of how do we make better choices about romantic partners. And so there was 85 scientists, and they combined data from 43 different studies, and with hundreds of variables. And they had a way of, they had a sort of a state, not sort of, they had a state-of-the-art way of evaluating the data. So not only did they have great data, they had better ways of analyzing it, because they had brought all these people together. And so her data included, demographics, which means age and education and income and race, and physical appearance, like how attractive was this person. And so she had data on that. And sexual tastes, what kind of sex and how often and what type, and interests and hobbies, and people's mental and physical health, and people's values, like on politics and relationships and child rearing and education and all kinds of stuff. So she got all this data together and was hoping to find, she states very openly in this, she said, I was really hoping to find what factors mattered the most when it comes to a relationship lasting. These two people love each other and they get along, and yay. She was really hoping to find that. And all the participants, the other team members were also hoping for that. And so that she was getting all of her data together, and she had gotten hired by the University of Waterloo in Canada to give this talk called "Can We Help People Pick Better Romantic Partners?" And so did she come up with a definitive answer? No, she didn't. None of the things that we think really matter, all the ways that we match, all the ways that we want to match, those things actually didn't matter. They couldn't find a correlation. But what they did find was, she said one of the things for her personally was that the number one lesson for her was how unpredictable relationships are, like why this one works and that one doesn't. That was just kind of amazing. And so all of that was a bit of a letdown. They didn't find what they were hoping to find. What they found is that good romantic partners are difficult to predict with data. But desired romantic partners are really easy to predict with data. Everybody knows kind of what they think they want. But what they found, so as I said, they kept looking. It didn't turn out the way they thought it would, so they just kept looking. And it turns out that happiness I so love this. Happiness in a relationship has nothing to do with the other person. It has to do with us. And specifically, if you answer yes to these kinds of questions, then you're more likely to have a great relationship with somebody else. And these questions are things like, are you a satisfied person? Do you feel satisfied in life? Are you happy? Meaning I'm not depressed. That was a specific, like no depression. And do you feel like you make a positive impact on the world? Is, you know, is your life worth it? Yes, if you answer yes to those kind of questions, you're more likely to be happy in a relationship. So the idea is that if you're happy outside of a relationship, without a relationship, then you're more likely to be happy when you get one. And there was one other thing she said that I wanted to actually just read to you. She said, further, and this was quite striking, how a person answered questions about themselves was roughly 4 times more predictive of their relationship happiness than all the traits of their romantic partner combined.
Wow. Now, when you talk about your desired, I know I remember before I married having this list of everything I thought it was important for
Yeah,
the man of my dreams to have,
yep,
and matching it up as you're dating, you're going down the list. Okay, check, he's there. Yeah, he's got that.
yeah, yep.
And that has nothing to do with it.
It has nothing to do with it. Nothing at all. They have found no correlation
Now,
with
it sounds like you're
what we
saying,
think we want.
with what we think
Yeah,
we want. So,
it
and
doesn't
as I
matter.
was listening to you, it sounds like you're saying it's not so much a matter of finding the right person, but being the right person. Would that be accurate?
That's really accurate. Yeah, yeah. So one of the things I find in my coaching is that people who come to me and they're all aflutter in a good way or a bad way about someone they're dating or someone they're married to, doesn't matter. Like if a, let's just say it's a woman, if she comes to me and she says, she starts talking only about him, it's just the biggest flag ever.
That's the red flag.
It's such a red flag. Yeah. You can't get to happy from there. You just can't. You can't get there because you're always trying to fix something out there rather than paying attention to here and focusing on yourself. Are you being the person you want to be? Are you being your authentic self? Are you being real? Are you honest? Are you, is this, are you being in this moment the person you hope you are? You know what I'm saying? Do you,
Yes. Are you
yeah,
being true to yourself?
true to yourself. Absolutely. Yeah, it's all that matters. It's all that matters. The more I do that personally, I can attest to that. The more I do that personally, then I'm happy no matter what happens, no matter what he does, no matter what's happening in the world. If I can stay centered in my own happiness or my own, I don't know, general satisfaction.
So when we get married thinking this other person is going to make me happy, we're going to be disappointed.
Well, it's then what you've done basically is handed your power to the other person.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And that never goes well, handing your power away. I don't think so anyway.
No, no.
No, no.
So what have you found in your practice with the couples that you work with?
So because it's such a, I don't know, normal thing to do, to come to a session with a list of what's wrong with your partner and how I should help you fix
Uh-huh,
that guy
uh-huh.
or
Yeah,
that woman.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Please, everybody, basically they say, please help me fix this other person.
Uh-huh.
Uh, One of the things I do, which is so, it's such a privilege to do. It's such a, I don't want to say precious, there's another word there. It's such a sacred, it's almost like a sacred thing, is that if I'm working with a couple and he's all upset about something, and she did this and she did that and blah, 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 then I do this thing called mouse in the corner. Have I talked to you? I don't know if we've talked about that
No,
before.
tell me.
Okay, so what happens is that whoever's the upset one, I ask permission to work with just that person. And the partner watches. They're quiet as a mouse. They can't bring attention to themselves. It's like they're a mouse in a corner. And they can't laugh out loud, they can't protest, they can take notes and ask questions later, but they can't interrupt the session. And so what happens is that I am able to work with, let's say it's the guy, I'm able to work with him to see what his role in all of that is without making her wrong. It's not about her. It's about his reaction to her or his trigger or his wounded place or his fear or something. There's something going on with him about that. And she gets to watch, which is such a beautiful thing. She gets to watch and see that she won't be blamed, but also that it's not actually about her. She's the player, she's the player in the game, but it's not because of her. So she can take blame off herself. She can just set it aside and say, thank you, have a seat to her blame, her self-blame. If she was feeling bad in any way, she gets to watch the whole process and have all of that lifted from her so that she can actually be more authentically herself around that issue, knowing that it's not her issue. Sure, they go together, things always weave together, and we always choose partners that help us work out our stuff. Everybody does, but that's one of the beautiful things, is that process that I do with couples.
So let me make sure I understand it. So
Okay.
say he's upset because of something, a habit she has,
Yeah,
and so she's the mouse in the corner, and you're working with him
yeah.
and helping him realize that it's his problem, that it, right?
One, I do. So essentially, yes. But what the beautiful part, the part that's always eye-opening to that person that I'm working with, is that we get really factual and we slow it down. We slow it down. So it's not about opinions and who's right and who's wrong. And it's not
Okay.
about, so I ask him to say, okay, what happens first? What do you do? And then what does she do? And then what do you do about that? So it's, and we go really slow so he can actually watch this thing bloom,
Yeah.
unfold right in front of him. And then sometimes the method, so we see how it is now. And I usually in some way ask, okay, so let's back it all up and you play a different role. So let's have you start it. So you start what generally happens, and then have her react maybe the way she always does. And then it's back to you. What could you do differently if you weren't that guy that kept it going? So I ask him to get creative. And then he realizes that he's been stuck on this track, where he just only knows how to do it one way. And so what I try to do with people is open up their creativity. How else could you respond? What else could it be? How else could you treat that person who just said that to you? What else could you do? What else you got?
So
So
it
usually,
helps the person you're working with. In this
yeah,
case, it's the man. So
yeah.
he's learning about how he could relate more effectively,
Well, even just differently. Like what
even
would
differently.
happen? Yeah,
Differently.
just
Again, there's no blame, no, just
no.
that there are other options. We don't have to relive, get stuck in this behavior loop.
Yeah, Joe Dispenza, Dr. Joe Dispenza, a scientist, author, lecturer, he says we've memorized ourselves by age 35. And and he has a lot of evidence for that. And so if we've memorized ourselves and we keep doing the old you over and over again, it took me a long time to figure out that I was bringing the same woman to the table every time I got in trouble in my marriage. I was like, no, he's got to fix this. No, I kept bringing the same person, expecting a better result. We always think if we just find the right partner, then we wouldn't have that trouble.
But
It's
we
not true.
take our problems with us.
We do. So mostly with people, if you take out the blame in the conversation, so if I take out the blame that
And
he doesn't get to blame her or himself.
okay. And you're
Yeah,
watching the video in slow motion. It's like
yeah,
they're watching the video. They're not in the video. They're watching it in slow motion.
yeah,
And then you say, okay, now let's get creative. What is a different way?
yeah. What else could you say? How else could you be? And then they realize that they just don't know. They haven't been thinking that way. And one guy said, I could actually laugh about that if I wasn't all upset. I could actually, that's kind of funny what she does. I said, yeah, so let's try that. Can we try that now? And so I said, would it be okay to come out of Mouse in the Corner, invite her in for a moment to play this role, and would you be willing to try it right now? And he said, oh, I'd love to do that. So they did. It was hilarious. I mean, it's sort of like they fell in love all over again right there in that moment, because they did something different than
Yeah.
they were. Yeah, it was really fun. And then she stepped back out and I finished with him. Yeah,
Okay, so what it
really.
does for the person you're working with, I can see that. That's so
Yeah,
empowering, helping them see they're stuck in a rut and they can be
yep,
more creative. Now, and you
yeah,
said for the person who's being the mouse in the corner, it allows them to set aside any guilt. They're not being blamed. They don't have to defend or justify themselves. They're just helping, they're just observing this video in slow motion.
yeah. And so they get to create new outcomes as well. They get to be part of creating a new outcome because they no longer feel bad about what they're doing. And they also don't, they realize they can change their role and their response because they watched him do it. They watched their partner do it and they go, gosh, I wonder if I could do that. And then it transfers to them and the whole thing starts to shift, and they came back the next week and they said they found another place where they had, these sort of regular tire tracks, how they always got into that argument or that problem or
Have the same
whatever.
argument several times.
Yeah. And they said, so we stopped it. One of us, I can't remember which one, he said, rewind. That's another thing. He said, let's rewind. And I'd like a second chance. And so she did. And they undid that one. So it's a skill that can transfer to other places in the relationship as well. And then it just became a joy for them, which was really
Oh,
delightful. Yeah.
well, you mentioned that this study was more about choosing the right
Yes.
romantic partner, but uh, wouldn't it also work okay, they're already married, but they're
Yeah.
learning to start working on themselves,
Yeah.
being their authentic self,
Yep.
learning to choose to be happy. I firmly believe happiness is a choice.
Yeah. Yeah. One of
And,
the women that I was interviewing recently, that was one of the things she said, I still remember that. She said, one of the things I figured out, and I wish my younger self had known, I know it now, but she said, I wish I'd known it 20 years ago, is that happiness is a choice. She said that. Yeah. It's a decision you make. Yeah.
so the decision could be made even if they're had been married for a decade or two. They could make, and especially you're talking about this couple, you're working with, or, that could make a huge difference in their relationship.
In the quality of their communication, in the quality of their intimacy, in the quality of just that day-to-day stuff, now they have kind of like a twinkle going on, instead, like how can we create a new situation here? And let's, it just made them both more able, more nimble is a good word. They became nimble.
Mhm. Yes. Well,
Yeah.
this study is particularly fascinating to me because I remember hearing all of the, choose someone who's from a background similar to yours, same religion, same political views, be as much alike as possible, or,
Yeah.
you know, make sure money's not an issue, all of these things. And
Yeah.
yet the reality, I have seen many blissfully happy couples that were completely divergent in background and religion and political views, and
Yeah.
others that were very similar and couldn't stand each other.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. So my current partner and I are like that. We have actually been dating off and on for 3 years, going on 4. And we finally moved in together. I don't think you knew that. His name is Paul.
Uh-huh.
And we're about as different as they come. I'm sort of a, leftover redhead here, freckles, and he's African American. He's actually mixed. His father was African American, his mother Oriental. So he's mixed, and we both grew up in the Midwest, which is interesting. He Ohio, me Iowa, but I lived in an all-white community, and he was the only Black kid in a white high school. So his experiences at that time, were, so I was back in, school in the late 60s and early 70s, and so when he got coffee dumped on him, and there were the race relations at that, he got, he was a
Oh,
star football player, and he was not treated well.
yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
so he has a lot of, he had death threats, and guys would try to beat him up, and so his
Uh-huh.
father taught him martial arts, you know. So, and he worked for, a big corporation, and I'm a solo entrepreneur and have always been, and and I'm a counselor, and he's about as far from that as you could get. And I thought that might be a problem,
Mhm.
but it's not.
Uh-huh. It
It's
doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter at all. It just makes me more flexible. I've learned flexibility. I've learned to listen in a way. And here's the other thing is that nothing about the marriage I had to my husband, who passed away 7 years ago. I'm so glad I learned all of that. And I'm so glad I understand all the things that happened with us back then. However, this is what's hilarious. None of it applies to the situation I'm in now. It's
Uh-huh.
just so
Uh-huh.
different. Yeah, so different. So different. Yeah.
Well, and I can readily believe that relationships are unpredictable.
Yes.
I always thought it was because there were too many variables. And I do appreciate the fact that it begins with us. Our happiness
Yes.
begins with us.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, this is eye-opening.
It's the only thing that mattered. Are you a happy person without anyone else?
Yes.
Oh
So
my God.
really, until you get to that point where you're happy on your own, you're not
Yeah.
ready for marriage or a long-term relationship.
Not really.
Mm-mm.
Not really. We should really take time to do that and get to know ourselves. And I always tell people when they're dating that dating is the highest purpose of dating is it has nothing to do with the other person. It has to do with meeting yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All those other situations, how are you when you're bored? How are you when how do you deal with feeling rejected? Or what
How
can
do you
you
handle
handle?
stress?
Exactly. And being supported, are you open to being supported? And do you know how to do that? Do you know how to welcome that? And so I think if we practice that sort of thing a lot before we get married, that's certainly an advantage. And then continue to practice that, in the marriage. I always say that it's just so important to have your partner be your partner in all things. And so instead of blaming my partner for hurting my feelings, this is just such a common one.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Instead of blaming don't ever do that, don't ever say that, instead of me going that way, I say, wow, I just got I notice my feelings are hurt. I wonder if you could just help me dig around in this a little bit and figure out where I learned that. Where'd that come from? It's not a way of being that I would really like to keep. So, it has to do with having your partner be truly your partner in all things
And
and trust.
being willing to be honest, really honest. Who wants to admit that, gee, I guess I do have a jealous streak?
Yeah. Yeah. I notice I'm jealous there. I notice I'm jealous when you do that. Yeah. That's true confession.
But how empowering. So I love this. So advice to our children as they're getting ready to, as they're growing up and dating and choosing a life partner, knowing that everything they told us doesn't matter, and that we need to work with ourselves. We
Yeah.
need to be happy and genuine.
I wish
And
parents, I wish, yeah, I wish parents talked more to their children about instead of, a lot of what we take into adulthood are the ways that things we were trained to be, how we were trained to be, forced to be, expected to be, you know, I I really wish parents would have more conversations with their children about true you, finding true you. Um, who is true you? You know, come home from school and something happened at school, and so parents who would ask the child, who is true you in this situation? What would you actually like to say to them or talk
mhm.
to them about? What's your truth, honey? I wish my
Yes,
parents had said that to me once. I mean, that would have, yeah,
that would be huge.
it would
And
be,
I think we tend to form the relationships that we learned from our parents, the kind of relationship they had.
yeah,
That's unless there is some intervention, that's the only training we get.
yeah,
Um, or
yeah,
well, yeah, what we see from others.
yeah.
So,
And creativity, you know, what that thing of really thinking outside the box. So, well, what else could it be? And
mhm,
do you think maybe they were just having a bad day? Maybe something happened to them and they passed it on to you. I don't
mhm,
know. What else could it be? You know,
yes.
and just instead of, because how many times have you, or I certainly has been true for me, I found out that something I thought was true, that, their motivation for doing that or
Uh-huh.
why they did it, turned out not to be true at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not at all.
So
Yeah,
we
I was way off the
start out,
mark.
yeah. So we start out with ourselves being happy and genuine. And then
Yeah,
there's that communication, that being willing to be honest and vulnerable. and then, and thinking, getting creative,
Yeah,
being willing to change
yeah,
a behavior pattern, being flexible.
yeah. Resilient,
Yes,
flexible, nimble. Be
yes,
nimble. Yeah. Jack
nimble,
be nimble,
nimble,
Jack.
that's the one.
Jack be nimble, Jack be quick. Yes. Or
Yep.
Jackie.
I love that. Oh, Terri, this is excellent. Okay. So, you said there's a YouTube video where you talk about this in more detail.
Um, I know I have a YouTube video somewhere. I'll have to find the link, but I do talk about this study that was done that I talked about here. So there's a little more information about that. I probably did a blog about it. Anyway, if I can
It
get
would,
those to
it
you,
would most likely be on your website.
it would be somewhere there. But the YouTube video would be on there. I don't know where it is, Emma.
Okay. If you find it, I
Yeah,
will, let's post it.
all right.
And if they want to connect with you, in careofrelationships.com,
That's the place. Yep.
they can connect with you there. They can learn more about you, the services you offer.
Mhm.
I always love talking to you because you have gained so many insights on all aspects of relationships, especially intimate relationships.
Yeah, that's really what I work with the most is the intimate relationships.
You
Yeah,
are an expert, truly an expert.
thank you.
Thank you so much for being my guest today, Terri. And
Absolutely. Always a pleasure to talk with you. It's so easy to talk with you. I love that. Yeah.
yes, yes, it's awesome. So they can also watch your show on Win Win Women
Yep.
and remind me day and time.
Thursdays at 1 p.m.
Thursdays at 1 p.m. on
Yep.
winwinwomen.tv.
Yep. Right now, I'm in the middle of moving, and so I'm not doing shows, but there are lots of shows there to look at.
Okay.
So,
So
yeah,
you're on hiatus for a couple of weeks, but
I am. I am.
you
I'm
have a
packing. I'm
rich
not even gonna,
story
yeah.
on a variety of topics. Wonderful.
Yep.
So to my viewing audience, join me again next week at the same time. Until then, love yourself and love your family. Let's make the world a better place by strengthening families. This is Emma Lou Penrod with HealingYourFamilies.com.